Hello Aquarius, my name is Keith Haswell and I'm a professional astrologer with 40 years experience in the business now and over 30,000 clients worldwide. It's my pleasure to welcome you Aquarius to this particular video on your cycles for January and February 2015. What I aim to do for you here is to help you Aquarius to become more of who you really are, as I do with every one of my videos. I've produced 145 YouTube videos now on all aspects of personal and spiritual growth, and I've also written 2 books on astrology, meditation and reincarnation to help you and others like you to reach and stretch and grow and become more of who you really are, okay? Now, I'm going to first of all tell you a few things about your personality, Aquarius, and then after I've done that I'll look at the movements of the faster moving bodies through your horoscope. You've either got the Sun in Aquarius or you've got a rising sign in Aquarius, and that's why you're watching this particular video. Now, you've been brought to this video by your higher self, who reckons that you're ready to make changes now inside of yourself, Aquarius, that you perhaps weren't ready for even a month ago. So just sit back and relax and enjoy the journey with me. I'll look at the movements of the Sun, Mercury, Venus and Mars as they move through the houses of your horoscope. They activate and precipitate into events and conditions, the incipient events and conditions that you've stacked up there on the emotional and mental plane through your raw materials and your thinking processes and your emotions. Now, it's all your fault, Aquarius. You're the one who is the epitome of New Age philosophy and New Age thinking, anything to do with computers, electronics, aviation, transportation, communications, and New Age philosophy like astrology, meditation, reincarnation, alternative religions, all originated from the Aquarian Age. From the Aquarian Age, which is now in full swing since the beginning of the year 2000. So it's a very exciting time to be alive, Aquarius, and you are right there in the forefront as a pioneer, as a New Age thinker. Now, you seem to have a lot of worries about finances, as if you can't get your hand on the pulse there properly. And you have a lot of insecurities as far as your emotional sense of well-being is concerned and your sense of stability in life is concerned. So sometimes you just don't feel safe. And so emotional stability and emotional well-being is sometimes just not there. And your finances can many times be a bit scattered and haywire as well. You've got a lot of energy to put into your ideas in life. You are quite forceful and dominant in speech. You drive a bit too fast, Aquarius. You've perhaps got a scar on the hand or the arm from a cut, burn or a scald at some time in your life. This is a lifetime situation that I'm giving you here, so some of these things, Aquarius, will not be realised until the future. Some will be in the past and therefore not a part of your life anymore. But you're a very aggressive person in speech, a very dominant type of a person. Now, you do love the security as far as the family is concerned. Family security is very, very important to you, Aquarius. You like stability in the home and the family and the domestic side of life, whoever lives with you. And you do like to have stability there as far as the residence is concerned. Not many changes in residence appeals to you. Now, you have many changes though in the romantic side of life. Before you get into a stable relationship, you perhaps have 2 relationships going at the one time. So you have a lot of changing romantic attachments and a lot of interest there. A lot of interest too in the social side of life and sports and entertainments and amusements. You have a lot of changing interests as far as that's concerned. As far as children are concerned, you may bring twins into the world. Now you work from home or you run some sort of a business from home at some time in your life, perhaps connected with computers or electronics. And you seem to have domestic pets around the home at some time in your life. And I would suggest that your partner would be a very proud person, a very attractive person, male or female, and you seem to really find them to be very self-conscious, aware, with good leadership qualities and organisational ability. So maybe you go into business together at some time. So that's just a few things about yourself, Aquarius, to tell you what's going on in your life. But what I'm going to do for you now is I'm going to tell you the movements of these faster moving bodies, the Sun, Mercury, Venus and Mars, and as they move through the signs of the zodiac, Aquarius, they also move through the houses of your horoscope. So I'll tell you that as they go through the houses, they activate and precipitate into events and conditions, incipient events that you've stacked up there on the emotional plane with your raw materials, your attitudes and your beliefs and your thoughts and your feelings. Now I'm going to put it on a timeline for you, Aquarius. So I'll tell you where they all are, those four bodies, on the 1st of January, and then when any one of them makes a change into a different sign and therefore into a different house of your horoscope, I'll tell you when that happens and what sort of events and conditions will be brought about by that change. Now on the 1st of January, Aquarius, you've got the Sun in the 12th house, you've got Mercury in the 12th house, and you've got Venus in the 12th house. With the Sun in the 12th house, you're very introspective and reflective, contemplating the divine in whatever way that appeals to you. Mercury in the 12th house, there might be a few secret worries about work, and there might be a few secret worries about a relative. And you can be a little bit secretive and deceptive when Mercury is in the 12th house. Venus in the 12th house, there's a potential there if you're in the market for a relationship to get involved in a relationship that's based on bad judgment, has a degree of secrecy surrounding it, and you can get your fingers burnt there. Mars is in the 1st house of your horoscope to start the month off with, and so therefore with Mars in the 1st house of your horoscope, there's a lot of extra energy and vitality there. You've got a lot of enthusiasm for your ideas in life to start the month off with, but there can be a lot of stress and tension for you, Aquarius. Now the first change that we come up to is on the 4th of January. Venus moves into the 1st house of your horoscope, beginning a 2 or 3 week period, Aquarius, whereby you are a lot more affectionate, outgoing in your affections, with a love of music and artistic things, and you'll be a lot more sociable too, so you're going to be going out a lot more. Love can come into your life when Venus is in the 1st house of your horoscope, so if you're in the market for a relationship, then one can form. Mercury moves into the 1st house of your horoscope, Aquarius, on the 5th of January. When Mercury is in the 1st house of your horoscope, you're a lot more communicative, especially with those close to you, like relatives and neighbours, and there's a lot more activity with them in communication levels. Mars moves into the 2nd house of your horoscope on the 13th of January, Aquarius. Now it stays there for 2 or 3 weeks. When Mars is in the 2nd house of your horoscope, you're going to be impulsive with money. So you're going to be wanting to spend things that are based on impulse, and there can be a lot of stress and tension for you to do with financial matters, so just try and relax a lot more to do with financial matters. On the 21st of January, Aquarius, the Sun moves into the 1st house of your horoscope, remains there for 30 days. When the Sun is in the 1st house of your horoscope, your whole personality drive is activated and you want to commence and start new projects and ideas. New relationships can come into your life in that 30 days, especially if you're female. Now on the 22nd of January, Aquarius, Mercury goes retrograde. Now when a planet is in an apparent backward motion in relation to the Earth, and the Sun. When Mercury is retrograde, in other words, it impacts negatively upon the first house of your horoscope, so there can be bad judgment with regard to commencing and starting new projects that don't work out the way that you want them to. And it impacts negatively also upon the 5th house of your horoscope, ruled by Gemini, and the 8th house of your horoscope ruled by Virgo, with Mercury retrograde impacting upon the 5th house of romance, love, matters relating to children and the social side of your life generally. You can have bad judgment and there can be disappointments connected with those areas. And the 8th house of your horoscope is the house of joint finances. So matters relating to joint finances, you can have a secret worries and difficulties for the next couple of weeks there, until the 12th of February. And then on the 12th of February, Aquarius, Mercury goes direct again, and so therefore that will all settle down again in those areas. Now on the 28th of January, Aquarius, Venus moves into the 2nd house of finances, remaining there for 2 or 3 weeks. Now that's going to be good for you financially. There'll be a lot of extra money coming in, but it's also a time when you're likely to be spending money. When Venus is in the 2nd house of your horoscope, you have a great deal of love, especially for luxuries, and you'll have a great deal of love for purchasing and buying things and spending money. On the 19th of February, Aquarius, the Sun moves into the 2nd house of finances for the next 30 days. And with the Sun in the 2nd house of finances, you've got a lot of mental energy, and personality drive is towards making money and bringing in the money, okay? Now on the 21st of February, Venus moves into the 3rd house of your horoscope, beginning a 2 or 3 week cycle of a lot more social involvements with relatives and neighbours. And there'll be a lot more affection between you and the neighbours and the relatives. And there's going to be a lot of interest more in music and creative things and artistic pursuits. Mars also moves into the 3rd house of your horoscope on the 21st of February, Aquarius. And when Mars is in the 3rd house, you drive too fast, you can have an accident on the road, but you'll probably be protected by the fact that Venus is there, so you won't get hurt. You'll have stresses and tensions potentially with relatives and neighbours, arguments and differences of opinion with relatives and neighbours, so just try not to be too dominant when Mars is in the 3rd house of your horoscope for 2 or 3 weeks. Now Jupiter is a slower moving body, Aquarius, and Jupiter moves through the house of your horoscope in 12 months. Now Jupiter has been in the 7th house of your horoscope for the last 9 months, so you've already felt the impact of that, and it's been a very beneficial impact. You've perhaps gone for a distant journey with a spouse or a partner, if you have one. And with Jupiter in the 7th house of your horoscope, it's been good for dealings with the general public, favourable stars for you socially, and relationships may have strengthened in the last 9 months. But Jupiter turns retrograde on the 1st of January and remains retrograde then for the 2-month period of January and February. And when Jupiter is retrograde, it impacts negatively upon the house that it sits in and the house that Jupiter rules. Now Jupiter in the 7th house of your horoscope retrograde is going to mean that you'll have bad judgment in terms of relationships, where you can confide in your partner and put a trust in them that's not warranted. There can be secret worries and insecurities in relationships, and it also impacts negatively upon the houses that Jupiter rules. And Jupiter rules the 2nd house of your horoscope, so there'll be bad judgment connected with money in this 2-month period. And you can have bad judgment also to do with friends. You can confide in a friend, for example, and that might be not wise at that particular time. You put trust in a friend and they let you down. In other words, when Jupiter is impacting negatively upon the 11th house. Now Saturn is sitting in the 11th house of your horoscope to start the year off with, but it's only just gone into the 11th house of your horoscope. That means that it's been in the 10th house of your horoscope, Aquarius, for the last 2.5 years. Now, with Saturn in the 10th house of your horoscope during the last 2.5 years, you've definitely felt the impact of that, Aquarius. There's been the death of a parent or an illness involving a parent, if they're still alive. And there's been frustrations for you in dealings with government departments over the last 2.5 years. Difficulties with career ambitions and things like that being frustrated and obstructed, with Saturn there in the 10th house of your horoscope. Well, that'll do as far as the personality side and the look at your lifetime conditions and circumstances and the look at those movements of the planets through the houses of your horoscope. Aquarius, look, all of us are charged with the task, Aquarius, of making changes within ourselves. The only thing that's constant in the universe is change. And most of us bring about changes within ourselves, Aquarius, along the avenue of necessity. In other words, we need to make changes inside of ourselves to maintain our financial viability, for example. We need to make changes inside of ourselves to hold the family unit together. We need to make changes inside of ourselves to keep that romantic attachment or that relationship together. We need to make changes inside of ourselves to hold on to that job. We need to make changes inside of ourselves to maintain our good health or to get back to good health. So that's the avenue of necessity, which is the avenue most trodden as far as bringing about changes within ourselves. Necessity. There's also the avenue of fear and pain. Now, you're never going to get rid of fear because fear is a real emotion. There's two major emotions in the universe, Aquarius, and that is love and fear. Fear is the polar opposite of love. Hate is not the polar opposite of love. Hate is a derivative of fear. But fear you'll never get rid of, because fear is vital to your survival, Aquarius. Fear of heights, fear of falling, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of humiliation, fear of illness, fear of loneliness. So fear is vital for your survival and a vital avenue of bringing about changes within yourself. Also, pain is a vital avenue for bringing about changes within ourselves, and we'll probably never ever get rid of that either. Especially emotional pain, Aquarius. It's through emotional pain mainly that we bring about changes within ourselves. We're forced to bring about changes within ourselves because of loneliness, because of depression, because of worry, because of all these emotions inside of ourselves that are very, very painful. But it's much more elegant, Aquarius, if we make changes along the avenue of gratitude. Gratitude for what, you might ask? Gratitude to God, Goddess, all that is, for the gifts that they have bestowed upon all of us. God and Goddess love you, and they know your name. And Aquarius, they've given us all the gift of eternal life. We can never ever die. We've all lived heaps of lifetimes in the past. You didn't just pop in, Aquarius, into this highly developed, highly mental, highly intelligent, highly emotional and sensitive person here on the Western world, on the crest of the wave of evolution. You didn't just pop in as your first lifetime, no. You've lived heaps of lifetimes before, as all of us have, to get where we are today. Each lifetime you live, you pick up where you left off in your last lifetime. And then when we've come to a point of relative perfection, we can then go on into higher dimensions of consciousness beyond the human level altogether. Well, what's that like, you ask? Well, that's like asking the dog what it's like here at the human level. Your dog will just look at you and say, "Where's my bone?" or "Where's my food?" You're the source of their food. They can't relate to the level of consciousness that you enjoy, that complexity that you enjoy. And so therefore it stands to reason that we don't have the consciousness developed either to be able to relate to what it's like at these higher levels of complexity, these higher levels of consciousness beyond the human level altogether. So let's not concern ourselves with that. Let's concern ourselves with getting to that point where we can move on into these higher dimensions as quickly as we possibly can. And we do so through gratitude to God and Goddess for all the gifts that they've bestowed upon us. They've bestowed upon us the gift of eternal life, but also they've bestowed upon us, Aquarius, the gift of consciously creating all of the events and conditions of our life through conscious choice. Now, most of us don't want that responsibility, Aquarius, and so we give that power away to our subconscious mind. Our subconscious mind then can only work with our raw materials according to cosmic law. And that is that these raw materials, which are our attitudes, beliefs, thoughts and feelings, and those attitudes and beliefs and thoughts and feelings sponsor decisions and choices, and they're the things that create all of the events and conditions of our life. Make no mistake about it, there's no such thing as random chance. As much as science would like to convince us that there's nothing but random chance, no, everything happens according to cosmic law, according to the law of attraction, the law of karma, and so forth. But what about those raw materials? If your raw materials, your attitudes and beliefs and thoughts and feelings are negative, wallowing in self-pity and fear and anxiety and doubt and insecurity and guilt and shame and tension and stress and self-pity and low self-esteem and things like that, well then what can you expect if they're the raw materials that are creating all of the events of your life, Aquarius? What can you expect the events and conditions are going to be like? So we are much better off to rise to the occasion and take the power that God and Goddess have given us, the power of consciously creating the events of our life through our raw materials that we spruce up and change from those negative attitudes and beliefs and thoughts and feelings to the positive ones of attributes and qualities and principles and values of integrity, trust, discipline, organisational ability, leadership qualities, high self-esteem, self-love and so forth. All of these are where we can become more of who we really are, Aquarius, and we can consciously create all of the events of our life through the power of conscious choice. So they're the gifts that God and Goddess have given us and bestowed upon us, in line with helping you to be able to expand your consciousness, expand your understanding about the nature of reality and your place in that reality. I've got available from my website 12 CDs out of my first book, What Really Matters, on astrology, meditation and reincarnation, that you can download that first CD and see if that's something that your higher self wants you to hear, because your higher self, Aquarius, has brought you to this particular video at this time because it reckons that you're ready to make changes inside of yourself that you weren't ready to make even a month ago perhaps. And so therefore it has brought you to this particular video to expose you to the message that's in here, and hopefully for you to then go on and download that first CD and see if that's a message that your higher self wants to convey to you. And if you like that, well then download CD number 2, and so on and so forth, right the way through the whole 12. I take you in and out of meditation time and time again to help you to become more of who you really are. If it doesn't appeal to you, that first one, well then put it off for 6 months or 12 months and then come back. And then once you've finished the 12 CDs of intensive number 1, you can go on to intensives 2 and 3 out of my deeper book, Coming Home, An Eternal Journey, that covers things on a deeper, more complex level. So to give you an idea of what impact that these CDs of these 3 intensives of mine are having upon those who are going through these intensives. I've got an email here that I received from one of my students in the last month, and he says, "Dear Keith, now finally at last answers, real answers. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The greatest journey of my life. Your lessons are exciting, challenging and empowering. As you say, I am now in spiritual university, studying consciousness expansion, and you are my loved teacher." And what a teacher! Patient, supportive, encouraging and expert. It's as if you know at what pace I can absorb information. While some goes over my head or I just plain don't hear it, I catch up on the next attempt. I'm being watched over, helped along and encouraged all the way. The meditations are perfectly timed and emotional for me. I can see now, though, that my words fail to fully describe the impact your intensives are having on every level of my life. For me to think that events and circumstances in my life were being shaped by outside influences appears now to be a weird dream. I'll never again see anything as I once did, but the impacts are much deeper and broader than that. What wonders will intensive number 3 hold? I'm going to find out. I can't wait to hear you talk about quantum physics and where it fits into metaphysics. The whole series is gold. Not for the last time. Thank you, Keith. Love, Lex. So that's a very heartfelt testimonial there, and when you go to my website, there's a whole bundle of other testimonials there from other people who've gone through my intensives and portrayed what they feel about it all, okay? Also, sometimes I do make available through my website, Aquarius, what's called a free horoscope number 1. Now, this free horoscope number 1 means that I've got to do your chart, and then after studying the chart, I then report in a 7-page printout what I see there about your moon. The moon rules your emotions, Aquarius, and where that sits by house and by sign tells a lot about you, because the moon changes signs every 2.5 days. So someone born 2.5 days different from you has got the moon in a different location. The rising sign changes signs every 2 hours. So someone born 2 hours different from you has the moon in a different house than what you do. So it's not just everything to do with Aquarius, it's you individually. Mercury rules your mind, and I tell you where that is by sign and by house. That has upon you. Venus rules your love nature, and where that is by sign and by house tells a lot about yourself and the energies that you wanted to experience in this lifetime. Mars rules your energy levels, and where that is by sign and by house has a lot of impact upon you as a person. And so that's a 7.5-page printout which is free of charge, sent to you by email together with your chart. But when I've done this before, I've sometimes had 40 orders, Aquarius, in one day. And with 40 orders in one day, that's a lot of work for me. And not only that, but to not only have to do the charts, but to have to fill in that 7-page report. So therefore, that's a lot of work for me, and I can't always guarantee that that's going to be there and be available, okay? So it'll be turned off and on like a faucet. But go there to my website. The website address will have popped up by now, and see if it's available. If not, well then download the CD and get stuck into them. You've got my videos as well. Subscribe to my videos, because I'll be pumping out another 150 odd videos in 2015 to help you and others like you to become more of who you really are. And I think that's about all that I need to say. So subscribe to my videos so that you get each one of them. And I wish you well in life in the future. Even if you don't get your horoscope done by me, no problem. go on with the CDs and go on with my videos. And I wish you all the best for the new year and look forward to working further with you should you decide to go further, Aquarius. So I thank you for your attentiveness and all the best. Thank you.